It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. My mute was on. So welcome everybody to our daily gun show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we're talking about guns. But we don't really go live anymore for a daily. That would be great. That would be our goal. We'll try to get back to that. But we go live on Friday nights to wrap up the week for sure. And then we go live a couple other times during the week whenever possible. So tonight, we're starting a little bit late for the people that are watching us live or joining us in real time. For those listening as a podcast, though, you can't tell the difference. But yeah, I just must have been exhausted. I fell asleep, took a little nap at like 6 p.m. and woke up way past when the show was supposed to go live. So I must have been exhausted, and I didn't realize it. So thanks to everybody who shows up for the live portion of the show. Being up truly in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. Eastern is more like it tonight. All right, so for those who are watching the show, we're going to be taking a look at our Substack post, essentially a blog post. And for those listening as a podcast, there'll be links to this in the description wherever it is you're listening to the podcast. We go live on Fridays to wrap up the week with a focus on what our Second Amendment protects. So there's lots of gun stuff going on, and we pay some attention to our friends who do stuff in that realm. But really what we're trying to do is archive, keep a running update every week on what's happening with our Second Amendment issues. There's a lot of them, and it's definitely a challenge, and we're by no means mastering that effort, but we are attempting it. So the way we do that is we go live and I prepare essentially a blog post. I prepare a list of things that happened during the week that are worthy of recording. We take that list and we put it as a description on this video on YouTube. It's also the blog post on Substack that we'll be watching as on the screen here for people that are watching this as a video. And then I post it over on our Patreon blog. And those are the things listed here at the top of the article. So that's the goal, is to get things that are of value out there into the world. And when we put them on our podcast, they go out to all the different podcast platforms, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all the different ones. And that means all this description, all these links, all this information about these valuable people and projects is going out as it's distributed as much as possible on a regular basis. That's our goal. We've been doing the internet for a long time, and we're not necessarily looking for a bunch of money or popularity. We're not trying to run the trends or anything. We are trying to lay down useful data that can be archived and can be useful for amplifying some of these projects. We want to thank our Patreons. I don't have my banner going. I forgot to do that. We have Patreons, people that are capitalists who financially support the projects that we do. We have a lot of them. We've done this for years now, so the people that are our Patreons have been on board for quite a while. We appreciate that. We have channel members. We have people that purchase stuff from our stores. We're capitalists. I'm not independently wealthy. I wish I was, but I'm not able to do this as like a trust fund baby or something. So and the people that help financially keep these projects going and make it possible to spend time on this, we appreciate that. And that's where this project comes from. It's sponsored by our project. It's funded by our Patreons. And that's the goal, is to get this information out there. And there's no advertisements. There's no sponsored links or anything. And it's just data. It's just the information. So we appreciate the people that make that possible. And with that being said, let's dig in. So we'll talk about the news of the week. And I get most of this from the NSSF. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the 2A, the meat of what we're talking about with this whole project. But like I say, we do follow some gun stuff. This is a gun show after all. And beyond that, we talk about some radio shows that I didn't list this week. And then some military interviews that are definitely worth your time. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with our gun calendars and then the things that our projects and stuff that we posted this week. All right, and this is an interactive project. I do this live. We record this live as opposed to recording it with a script and some kind of studio and making it all fancy. Again, our goal isn't to produce fancy product. It's to produce consistent, valuable product. And I find that, or I value the interactive nature of the internet. We learn a lot more with everybody being involved, so feel free to take part in the show. Even if you're listening on X, people on X are notorious for watching and never participating, so I always like to give you an extra invite. You are allowed to participate in the internet as well. People on YouTube understand this, and we appreciate them. Speaking of that, Hillbilly is one of our channel members. There's some people that hate Patreon for some reason, even though we get a better bang for our buck over on Patreon. But yeah, some people hate Patreon, and they typically use our YouTube channel membership as a way to support us financially, support our projects financially. And again, thank you for that. He's not really a new member. His credit card had a hiccup, and he's been an existing member. That's frustrating, though, when that happens, because the system doesn't have a way to deal with that. So it'll probably start him now. He's probably been a member for a year, half a year or something. I'm in Arizona, so I'm going to have to stop every once in a while, drink a little water. I'll try to give you a commercial when that happens, so you don't have to hear me drink. All right, let's dig into it. Talking about 2A news of the week. Like I say, this comes from NSSF. Every once in a while, if something else comes across the board, I'll post it in here too. But the NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, pushes out a bunch of newsletters, actually, but one newsletter on Fridays called I think it's called like the Industry Wrap Up or something. And that I find the most useful of all their publications, and it has sort of a bullet point. Now, I whittle that down. I filter out a bunch of the stuff, and I definitely whittle it down from the stories that they post, but they do a good coverage for the most part. So that's where I get most of this from. We're talking Congress is out of session for August, which is one of the reasons we're seeing a shift in reporting and news. Remember, a lot of people out there, especially in election year, when there's money on the table, there's a lot of election money on the table, and then there's just a lot of action with ads and stuff online. So it's very lucrative for people to post content online right now, especially people that are only in it, like the fair weather content creators that understand the trends and the fluctuations in like money. So they'll come to the surface now, and you'll see a lot of extraneous blog posts, let's put it that way, at videos that don't need to exist. And especially when Congress is out of session, they don't know what to do with themselves. So you're going to see all kinds of stuff out of left field, stuff that they're hoping that will catch your eye. Ballot initiative to enshrine a right to hunt and fish to the Florida state constitution. So I forgot, I didn't put the initiative's number in here, but or there is no number, probably. What am I thinking? Ballot initiative. So they're starting a ballot initiative to, I guess, add hunting and fishing as a right in Florida. I don't know if that's necessary. Feel free to leave some comments on that one. I want to leave that first one off. I put it in there kind of out of just to kind of post it, and then I kind of riffed on the fact that we're going to see a lot of effort just to get something out there because Congress isn't there to fuel the headlines and the titles and the thumbnails. If we had efforts at the national level to do something more than court cases and do something more than report on when representatives tell us or affect us. Right now, all we have is reactionary commentary. We have reactionary coverage. Very little coverage is proactive. Is that the right word? Like, there's very few initiatives out there that are cutting new ground, that are creating new trails. All we do is get ambushed and then talk about it. And most of our huge organizations are going after things that have already happened with lawsuits, and most of the news is reacting to whatever serves the other side has given us. So when we have Congress out of session, isn't this an ideal time to do things? Isn't this an ideal time to act? Is this an ideal time to hold the Congress people responsible? Are they allowed to clock out and we're going to clock out at the same time? Or are they never off the clock? Just because they're out of session in DC, that doesn't mean they're off the, they're clocking out. Now, maybe when they're on vacation, let them have some vacation. We don't want to be weird. But I don't think that just because they're not throwing curveballs and lobbing bombs at us, we're supposed to just go lick our wounds and shut up until they decide to start attacking us again. When do we hold it to them? When do we keep them accountable for the bullshit? If they throw a bad law at us and we resist it, why do we leave it there? Why don't we hold them accountable for how would they have paid for that? Why would they come up with that? Why didn't they do the alternatives? We just let them throw stuff at us. We dodge it and we walk away. We leave money on the table. So just leaving that there. I don't like to suggest that we're winning because everything we do is perfect. We do a lot of things that are either a waste of time or, in this case, leaving money on the table. Going down to Oregon, HB 2005 will take effect on September 1st. I guess I forgot about this, but Oregon has a, I didn't do this very well. They have a ban on home-built firearms about to take place starting in September. I remember they had some issues with ballot initiatives, right? I think it was ballot initiatives. Now it's been a while. But we had a lot to learn from Oregon, and I don't think as a nation we learned anything from what happened in Oregon. Now that some of their heinous shit has taken effect, maybe we'll pay attention. But honestly, with everything happening in Massachusetts and murmurings in other parts of the country like New York and New Jersey, maybe a little bit even in Maryland, maybe we're not even going to pay attention to this happening in Oregon. That's how they get us. Jabs and slices, right? Stick us with ice pick, jab, slice you with a razor blade. And, if they're threatening you with a sword, those little wounds don't seem so bad until you start to bleed out. The JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, published an article, Deer Hunting Season and Firearms Violence in Rural Counties. I rag on NSSF because sometimes they need to be ragged on, but I also accredit them and hold them up on their shoulders because they're also an awesome organization. We can do both. And this, I think, is important. The medical, so there's 3 ways that guns interact with society, or I think there's one way to describe it is to say there's 3 ways. You got your criminal, right? So the police. You got your sociological, your society, and that would be the politicians and policy. And then you've got the medical and the medical or the health issues. Politicians never want to suggest that it's a political issue. So they'll take the societal issues off the table as if that can't even be an issue. If they appoint police, like the police chiefs, you'll see police chief organizations often suggest that can be a criminal problem that guns exist. If you listen to a sheriff who is voted in, not just appointed by a representative, but if you talk to somebody who's voted in, you'll often get resistance to unnecessary gun laws. But then you get the doctors. And who owns the doctors? Well, essentially whoever has money, because doctors aren't, they're not perfect and they're not ethically perfect or anything. They're just people who decided to go take a lot of school and learn some stuff. Some of them are very altruistic and really care. But some people who really care don't pay attention and just will carry you to death, right? Carry you into slavery. So just because they're doctors doesn't make them right all the time. It just makes them people who've been to school for a long time and may or may not have a lot of experience with keeping human machine alive. So when the medical arm of this whole thing is flexed, we do no good by just ignoring that. There's nothing we can do about the politics side except vote and then hold people accountable for what they do when we don't vote for their shit. And then, with the law enforcement side, we pretty much have that stalemate. The appointed police will always vote with whoever appointed them, which is, up to the political whims. But then the sheriffs will typically go with the will of the people, which is almost always individual freedom. So this medical is something that we have control over if we choose to flex that muscle. And if we do nothing, and if our national level organizations insist on only focusing on court cases, we're in trouble. Because I think we have a lot of potential here. We've had in the past great success with doctors challenging unscrupulous use of medical power, I guess, influence or authority. And we have a fairly weak medical presence in the firearms community. We have the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership who effectively send out some tweets and have a stale old website that hasn't changed in years. And they have one or two doctors that show up every once in a while. And I don't even know if they show up on podcasts. They show up in real life to events occasionally. But as far as work being done, it's not an active, growing, hardworking organization by any means. And then we have Walk the Talk America, which is specifically talking about mental health. So they're doing great things, but there are a couple of people and a focus on mental health. So we have a lot of potential in the medical realm, doctors, and gun owners. So great for NSSF for illustrating this one. And I don't know if anybody else is going to pay attention to this, but talk about propaganda, deer hunting season and firearms violence in rural counties. I haven't read it, but the only thing that they could even make a correlation with would be suicide, because there's no accidents of any consequence. And of course, there's no violence. So, there's some stories of, wives' tales of accidents, back in the day, but those are typically just jokes or, trying to teach a kid, don't drink and hunt type of thing, or don't hunt too long and get tired, or, just don't risk things when you're hunting, just wives' tales. Anyway, we'll move on. So we're not getting too much interaction, even though there are some people listening in the middle of the night. You are allowed to interact with the show. Feel free to use your fingers or, your elbow or your nose or whatever. Wiggle on the keyboard part of your phone or of your computer if you're an old-fashioned, and that will turn little electronic stimuluses across the tubes into words on my side. I'll use my eyeballs to read the words, and then interactivity has become achieved. You're allowed to initiate that. All right, so next up is $25,000 contribution from Taurus to NSSF's Protect Liberty Political Action Committee. So the Protect Liberty PAC political action committee, essentially like a lobby. I don't know what to tell you. $25,000 seems like a lot of money, but is that a lot of money? So, what is that for? That is NSSF's pool of money to fund politicians' campaigns who are pro firearms industry. For all the people out there that think we don't need an NRA, $25,000 funneled from Taurus through NSSF. I have no reason to believe NSSF will touch that. So that $25,000, in total, will still go out and do what it's aimed for. Go to political committees. I mean, at a very local level, 5,000 here, 5,000 there, might buy some signs or something that might be beneficial, really, in an actual thing. But compared to what the NRA was doing or can do, I don't know what they're doing now. But, in the heyday when there was really attacks in the 90s, when NRA ILA did its thing, I should say the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it's just tiny compared to what it used to be. Everybody looks at what we've got now, and of course, there's no news from the NRA. They don't try to defend themselves. They don't know how to defend themselves. So the only news you get is from people who either get $10 every time you join one of the current 3 letters, the smaller 3 letters, or somebody who works for one of the smaller 3 letters, and they got no interest. They've probably never done any actual research on it. So they just give you some platitudes and some generalities. And now, we shit on the NRA. It's just a cool thing to do ever since, 2010. It's just been cool to shit on the NRA. Essentially, once the NRA stopped paying dudes $10 a membership back on YouTube days. So I don't know when that was, 10 or 14, somewhere back then. And then let's say somebody from Colorado started paying them $30 per membership. All of a sudden, NRA was shit, and the place in Colorado was so good for about 15 minutes until somebody didn't get paid. But that's here nor there. So anyway, now we live in a world where NRA can't do nothing right, and essentially people ain't even pay attention to how we got to where we are. We're spending Taurus is spending $25,000 to election campaigns. What can the gun community do? Is this it? Is this all we get? Is some companies? And this is a company in South America. Obviously, they're making money up here, so they care. And they're spending $25,000. But is this what we're doomed to deal with? Like we have to depend on tourists to bail us out, and what they're able to afford? What could the gun community do with some actual focus, with some insight and some direction? I'm pretty sure we could roll up our sleeves and get some shit done. All right, next, Kansas Supreme Court, Johnson versus Beretta. So somebody is suing Beretta because I don't think they were drunk, but they misunderstood how to work their firearm and one of them shot the other one in the leg while they were sitting in a car. And they're suing Beretta for that. They're also suing somebody else and somebody else. And the Kansas Supreme Court said, nah. And I think they're taking it to the next level. But essentially, that's a case of the PLACA, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms. Somebody being negligent and trying to sue the company for making a gun that has a confusing manual of arms, I guess. Interesting. I don't know why that's coming up on the radar. Maybe it's because it's slow week or whatever, but it's just an interesting application, I guess, of PLACA. You only hear of PLACA when the antis bring it up, because, of course, we never bring anything up unless the antis tell us to. Lastly, the Fourth Circuit Court upheld Maryland's handgun law. So Maryland's handgun license is still legal. And that's frustrating. So we'll see. I guess is that can be possible to take them to a higher level, and nothing happens fast. So we'll see. What happens next, or if it happens next. When I do the show a little earlier or at the normal time, there's often people interacting. So I take a minute here to look at the comments, and of course nobody's saying anything because it's late in the middle of the night. So there's some pauses here that don't need to happen. So next we'll get into the 2A section of the show, and I always post the most 2A stuff at the top, essentially. At least that's how I kind of filter it through here, or as I post it, as I put it kind of some general order. So I think one of the most important things, if not the most important things that happens on a weekly basis, is Brooke Cheney's effort to normalize the discussion about mental health and suicide prevention. So she does a show called Suicide Prevention Saturday, and it's a show, it's maybe 20, maybe, at the most 30 minutes. Rarely is it more than that, and sometimes it's less than 20 even. And it's just an effort to have consistent conversation about the topic, normalizing the conversation about mental health. Unless we talk about it regularly, how would we learn a new language, right? How would we understand a new concept? In this case, learning the verbiage and talking about the concepts so that we can have better conversations with ourselves and with the people who think that our guns are the problem or that our ownership of guns are the problem. So not to cast blame or not to say there's like easy answers, but obviously there's nuance to all this, and we understand that the mental health and suicide is a big piece of the number of firearms deaths. And of course, those numbers are used against us. So being able to talk about it more comfortably and more capably is how we're going to change things, is how we're going to move that Overton window. Right now, the antis, the people that hate our guns and our property and our rights to own it and want to blame everything on it, are able to do so because of the misunderstandings, because there's a general non-awareness, like an unawareness of guns out there. People understand guns from movies and from news stories. So unless we think magic is going to happen or somebody's going to do it for us, it's on us, gun owners, people that have a concern here, to change that perception. And one of the ways we do that is by letting folks know that 2/3, 2 out of every 3 deaths with a firearm is suicide. And that isn't a consequence of owning a gun. That's a consequence of either the situation people are in or the lack of help or understanding from the people around them. A lot of times, if you've got a broken leg and you don't understand broken legs and you walk around on it too long, your leg's going to be permanently altered. You're going to have permanent injury to that leg. But if you don't understand a broken leg and you're walking around on it and everyone around you understands a broken leg and warns you and urges you to do something and put that in a cast, and you do that and you now heal and you move on, why is that any different with mental health? Right now, because we don't have it normalized, mental health is used against us, and it's used as a scapegoat, and it's unnecessary, and it's not the way it has to be. And Brooke Cheney is creating a project that helps to change that. So again, it's probably the most important thing that's happening on a consistent basis for our rights. Next up is Massachusetts had a rally on Saturday of last week for the crazy, horrible laws that are happening there. Their way to combat that or challenge the laws, which essentially happen backdoor. They happen very quickly by taking the process and finding a law that had been almost all the way through their process, and then they added all this gun stuff to this law that had already gone through all the committees and everything, and both sides of their Congress kind of gave it the nod. Sure, let's just go ahead and include all this anti-guns package into this some kind of funding bill for something completely different. And everybody just said, sure, we're going to go ahead and let that happen. And then boom, overnight, they had this horrible this package of anti-gun stuff that's so vague and poorly written that it essentially makes just about most guns illegal in Massachusetts, because it's just, again, such a and inaccurate type of legislation, and unnecessary, of course. So the one way they've decided to fight it is to have a ballot initiative, which will challenge, I guess, the concept of it or the ability to do it. And with enough signatures, they'll remove it from taking place, and it'll instead be put onto the ballot for the state to vote on, instead of going through the backdoor process that it kind of is on the track of. So it's not a given, but it's an opportunity for Massachusetts to challenge and change the direction of this thing. So they had a rally on Saturday to kind of get the ball rolling, but 2,000 people showed up. Toby from Cape Gun Works was there with their camera, with their phone, and they filmed the event and did a great job of getting the speakers. So it was like good audio. You could really hear the speakers, but they also walked around enough and turned the camera around quite a bit so you could really see the size of the crowd. Really great coverage of the event. We don't get a lot of 2A rallies, period, and most of them are at the beginning of the year. So very rare that we get a 2A rally this late in the year. So it was awesome. And it also was arranged and put together in just a few weeks because of the way that things are happening in Massachusetts. It wasn't perfect. Towards the end of the filming here, there was an issue, and that's a whole nother topic. But again, we're not robots, and we don't all have the same thoughts and points of view, and some people can handle that and some people can't. And how we overcome that reality is going to be, how quickly we're able to move to the next level. And then we get to the Forge of Freedom podcast, which had no lawyers, only guns and money. So Richard came on to Alex's show, and they talked about goals, which Richard had attended, and then they talked about the future of the NRA. And am I saying Richard? It's Adam Richardson, I think. And then he's running for NRA board. So I can barely talk. I'm going to play a commercial here for Gizzard's show. I think I might have the wrong one up here. The times might not be right. But I got to drink something. I'll be right back.
This is Earl Benson, reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Foul Territory, Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.
So about half an hour before you have to get something to drink for your lungs completely collapse or whatever. Not too bad. Let me get back to what am I looking for. There we go. Nobody's saying anything. I'm looking for all the comments, and there are no comments. All right, so Alex had... Is it Adam Richardson? Why can't I drawing a blank? He must be having a stroke. But he had No Lawyers, Guns, and Money on. Then we have, just this morning, Talk America. Most weeks, not every week, but a lot of weeks, more often than not, they go live on either Thursday or Friday mornings and have conversations live that are essentially their recording. That's how they record their podcasts. They'll take that live recording and have it edited, and then take that edited version and post it as a podcast. So if you want to see the raw and be part of the show, you'll listen to it on Friday live. And if you just want to hear the fancy edited produced version, probably all leveled out and sounding nice, you listen to it. I think on Tuesdays they come out. I don't post those because I've already seen all of them. Let's see. Toby from Cape Gun Works has been posting lots of updates and info videos, answering questions for people and keeping people up to date on what's happening in Massachusetts. And one of the ways they've come up with to challenge this unjust regulation is to create the Civil Rights Coalition. And then that's the people who signed the initial challenge and are collecting the signatures. So they need to collect 50,000 signatures in the state of Massachusetts. They have to be from a number of counties, essentially. They want you can't just get 50,000 from one gun shop. You need it to be a representative of the whole state or something. So there's some stipulations on how they do it. So they've educated people on how to be effective and how to get effective or useful signatures, so that people aren't wasting their time and we're not getting signatures that won't be counted. And we'll see. Hopefully there'll be some national level effort to make this happen, so that they can not just they need 50,000, they're trying to get 100,000 just to be safe. But if they got 1 million, what would that say to the representatives? All right, next up is our friend Foss. Does a Take Our Friend to the Range series. He's on number 16. And this is, I think the way he said it was he's having a conversation with some people that he knew. And somebody said something. He said, "Hey, would you like to go to the range?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll take you up on that." And she's not necessarily a gun person. And this was her first time being around guns and touching a gun. And then she went through, the 22, the 40, the 45, and a 357. I might have missed one. And then they had a quick conversation at the end. So very effective introduction to firearms, and a great way to kind of cover it and share that concept. And how do we normalize guns? A lot of people say one person at a time. And, if we have 30,000 gun owners somewhere, and each of those people reach out to another person, now we have 60,000 gun owners. What happens if everybody reaches out again? Then you know what I mean? That adds up pretty quick. So with that being said, we're going to get into the gun talk portion of the show. Riding Shotgun with Charlie and Meet the Pressers are two channels that are friends, and they've interviewed a bunch of people. So occasionally they'll get together and re-interview people that they've both interviewed individually, and they call that the combo show or something. And they had on Ed Monk, who's I think he's like an Arm the Teachers type of thing. So they had an interesting conversation there. She Fires posted this video. I had no idea that she had some things happen with her occupational life this year. And so she's posted a kind of update to her channel's members and stuff. Worth checking out if you're interested in that, her portion of the community and what's going on over in Florida. Gun and Gear Reviews do their show on Tuesdays. One of the shows I watch that on the regular, where they talk about guns and stuff, and worth checking out on Tuesday evenings. Every once in a while, Yankee will have me and Matt on to do a chat, and we had one on Thursday. So if you ever watched Matt and Yankee go off on each other, I would rarely get any arguments, but every once in a while I'll get an argument. But Matt and Yankee will constantly misunderstand each other or just disagree with each other seriously. But they got into it. I forget why, even for some reason. They disagreed on something, and they, we've known each other for a long time. So whenever it's just like two brothers or something, they know when they're not going to say, neither one of us is going to change each other's mind. And it takes them a while before they figure out that, all right, it's pointless. But they ended up yelling at each other for a while. It's been a long time since we got that element of the show. Then you got Gizzard's show. So Gizzard had his show at he starts at 7 or something. And I think I was like, I'm going to take a nap at 5 or 6 or something, like way before Gizzard's show, I think. I don't even think I commented on his show. And then I just laid down. I just laid down to rest my eyes. And then 6 hours later, I woke up. So I'm not saying that's Gizzard's is his fault, but his show is on before me, and I took a nap. So we'll just leave it like that. On Wednesday, Foss does the Mouse Party. And if you're up in the middle of the night now, guess what? On Wednesdays, he's live every week. Now, every other week, he does the overnight. So last week was one. This week, he refuses to do one. But maybe with enough emails, he'll give in and start doing a weekly overnight the way it should be. A decent schedule. Let's see. Then I thought this was neat. It's not really guns, I guess, but Kaiser, the knife people, who should send me a lot of knives. I don't know why they don't send me a lot of knives to review. I'm an excellent knife reviewer. I move a lot of knives. But they did a giveaway, so that was kind of cool. So a knife company went live on YouTube, probably on Rumble and other stuff, and gave away like 2 or 3 knives that I watched. I don't know how many they did because I picked it up like an hour into it. But essentially, they were just talking about their knives, answering questions and showing them off and stuff. And then they would do with the, what do you call it, with the StreamYard giveaway tool. They just started giving away knives. All right, so the radio shows I forgot to put in here this week, I guess. But Cape Gunworks goes live 3 times in a week usually. He'll go live on Sundays on a radio show that they do in Massachusetts. And he'll go live on his phone while he's at the radio station. That one's pretty cool. It's only an hour, and then he usually doesn't stick around too much longer. Then on Tuesdays, he does a 2A Tuesday segment with the Grace Curley Show, and he'll go live, I don't know, sometimes even a half an hour early or something, but, he'll go live sometime earlier than the segment starts. Then he'll do the segment with her, while he's live. And then often Toby will stick around after that segment, and especially now with the stuff that's happening in Massachusetts, and answer questions and just kind of chat. Then on Wednesdays, they do their major podcast recording. So for an hour, Toby will go live talking about whatever and answering questions, interacting with the comments from the people watching live, unlike what we got going on tonight. And then the second hour of his show, he has a guest on usually, and they do an interview type of hour-long conversation. Pretty awesome series coming out of Massachusetts from a gun shop. And I've been watching Toby now for a couple of years. Really enjoy his ability to interview and keep a show going and offer info and just have a good time and kind of, he's honest, he's real. Let's see. Then we've got the Gun Owners Radio, which happens on Sunday, right at the same time as She Fires does her show. And what happened this week is they only were live for like 15 minutes, so I didn't bother putting it in here. It was just they must have had some kind of issue technically and never went back online. Hey, there's Gunmetal Guy joining us. Welcome. I'm assuming you're at work listening. That's kind of why we do our show in the middle of the night, for all the people that do all the stuff in the middle of the night that everybody takes for granted and doesn't even pay attention to. Everything that gets reshelved or restocked or driven from here to there or cleaned or replaced or rebuilt. All the stuff that nobody pays attention to. I know that most of my life I've worked night shifts, so I always appreciated Art Bell doing his show in the middle of the night. I've actually reached out to places about 2 years ago trying to do this as a full-time thing, and nobody would help me with that. So I'll eventually get to where we can do that, but do appreciate the people that listen live and participate in the show with the show. Hopefully everything's going good for you on your end of the internet. All right, so that was the 2A radio shows. I guess I was saying that Gun Owners Radio normally goes live for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, but their show ended about 15 minutes in, so I didn't link any of the radio shows this week. We're gonna go take a look at gun calendars. I messed up the podcast schedule, so this stuff will actually be probably closer to accurate than usual. So this is actually being recorded on the 31st. So we have Ken Hackathorn being born today. If you're not familiar with him, Ken Hackathorn. Actually, a lot of people are probably familiar with Ken now because of his affiliation with Wilson and doing the YouTube videos. But prior to that, people in the training community knew who Ken was because he's been he's like a foundational member of the Firearms CCW training community since the inception. He was one of the core instructors with Gunsight, essentially the first modern school for shooting. So Ken's been around for a long, long time, and then he was also one of the founding people who created IPSC and IDPA both, I think. So impressive impressive participation in the firearms community. He's also a writer. Then we also have the anniversary from 1911 of the Sullivan Law, the first, I wrote in here the first CCW law, but then I learned a lot more. So it was the first CCW law in a city that's still in effect today. So the other laws that happened before this, there were laws that happened before this. Those were all, I don't know if they were all called Jim Crow, but they were all effectively, let's keep the guns out of the hands of some people. They were discriminatory gun laws. This one is also a discriminatory gun law, but it still exists today. And this is essentially the beginning of all modern gun prohibition laws. So that's the Sullivan Law, and that started on the 31st back in 1911. Let's see, then we have on the 1st, Texas starts issuing CCW permits back in 1995. So by no means the first state, but definitely in the first wave of states to normalize carrying a firearm. That took a while. It all kind of, there was always Vermont, and then like Alaska kind of went back and forth, but essentially Florida said, nah, let's let people carry guns. That's not a bad thing. And a couple of states jumped on pretty quick, and Florida and Texas was one of them. So they definitely led the way with carry. Unfortunately, they had some weird ideas, and they weren't perfect or nothing, and it took them a little while to get past all that. And they're not quite all the way there, but they're doing pretty good. Let's see. Then we have on Monday, the 2nd, in addition to being Every Second Matters, which is a campaign to just create awareness of what our Second Amendment protects on the 2nd of each month. Everybody can be a part of that. You just post something, about what our Second Amendment protects on the 2nd day of the month to help normalize or, have a conversation about guns that isn't a reaction to some anti-rights campaign or bullshit, right? So on the 2nd, we have a bunch of different things happening. We have the anniversary of the passing of the guy that founded Trigicon. And then we have the anniversary of the birth of Hiram Percy Magnum. Percy Magnum is the suppressor. That's the son of Hiram Maxim, the machine gun guy. So there's three Maxims. One of them is the dad, one of them is the son, and one of them is the brother. So there's the dad and the brother of the dad, and then there's the son of the machine gun guy. The son of the machine gun guy creates the suppressor. He also kind of creates ham radio and Hollywood or something, like movies or something like that. He's an inventor, and he does quite a few different things. But he also creates the car muffler, I think. Let's see, then it's also Labor Day, I guess. Then we have the anniversary of Nebraska constitutional carry. That happened in... Didn't I write the date down? Nice, I didn't write the date down. So whatever date that was, it was happened on the 2nd of, at least it probably took effect. Usually things get voted on some other point. I usually put the date they take effect into the calendar, though. And then in addition, on the 2nd, we have the anniversary of the Pittman-Robertson Act, which was from way, way back in 1937. And that is the thing that puts a fee on all firearms, and then in all ammunition, all bows and arrows. I don't know if it's all fishing poles, but essentially all sporting goods that have to do with hunting, and apply this extra tax, and then that tax goes to help fund all the critters and all the habitats and all the government bureaucracy to create all that, which a lot of people would bitch about and moan about, but otherwise you live in a country that has no shared wild lands, and that means that you have rich people that own private lands that they do whatever they want on, and they get elephants and tigers and dumb shit that shouldn't be there. Or they timber it all out, and it's got nothing but new growth forest. So we do have, this like touch of socialism or communism where we have these shared lands, but that's a pretty nice piece of communism to have. If we're going to have a chunk of communism, having old growth forests, Canada only has 5% old growth forest. We own a shit ton of old growth forest altogether. They'll put cows under it, they'll do dumb shit to it. They'll sell the rights out underneath of it to the minerals, but they'll leave the trees there. So, we've got some pretty neat shared resources here, and that Pittman Robertson is partially responsible, but at the same time, we should be getting credit for that as gun owners. Not only do we pay for all that, but we're willing to pay for all that. And we take a lot of black eyes. We should be able to, where's NSSF, giving us the get on the shoulders once in a while. Like, we should be championed for, or at least the hunters and the hunters really should be championed for, actually, no, it's not just the hunters. The hunters are getting the benefit of it, but it's actually all gun purchasers, are essentially making that happen. Anyway, next up is Roy Weatherby, being born back in 1910. Holy moly. And his dissatisfaction with the accuracy of rifles and shotguns also, I guess, technically, influenced him to start adding, modifying, and then eventually making his own firearms, but also cartridges and calibers. So he ended up being a pretty interesting inventor, definitely into the hunting realm. So a lot of people that aren't in that realm don't really follow that one or his exploits or what. Then we have Berdan. You've heard of a Berdan primer. That guy was being born back in 1824 on the 5th. So next week, or no, on the 6th, I guess. The guy from the Setme, Ludwig Borglimer, was born in 1912. We got his anniversary coming up, and then another anniversary of a passing, and that would be Uzi Gall. So the Uzi is named after the first name of Uzi Gall. He died at 78 back in 2002. So you probably had a chance to shake the hands of the guy who invented the Uzi, but he actually lived in the United States, I think, towards the end, if I remember right. So anyhow, that's the kind of stuff that's coming up on the calendar. We want to thank our Patreons. You'll see there's no ads over there. Nobody's trying to get you to buy no calendars or nothing. It's just a calendar. And the goal is to let people know about what's going on in history, what's coming up as far as rallies and industry events. And anybody's free to use it. It's just guncalendars.com. That's a courtesy of our Patreons. Thank you for that. They give us the time to put all that together, keep it updated. And there's a little bit of cost. It's not like it's a massive cost to keep a little website going, but for the many, many, many years that it's been around, the Patreons have made that possible. So thanks again to those folks those capitalists who financially support the projects that we do out here. We're about to get to the military interview things, but I'm going to take another drink. We'll do another quick break while I talk about, I already did gizzards this show. Let's talk about she-fires. I guess there's nothing to talk about there. That's just like a graphic. But She Fire's show is called the Fireside Chat, and that's 6 p.m. Eastern or 3 o'clock on this side of the country on Sundays. What is that noise? Who's walking around? What's going on over here? The little dude woke up. Something happened. He didn't. Oh, he probably heard the noise. He thought something was happening. He woke up and started stretching. All right, so we'll get into the military interviews. These things are super good. You don't have to like the military that much, but man, you can learn a lot from these things, not just on military topics, but just from the perspective of these folks. Really, really interesting conversations. And they've got such insight on so many things. And then when they get out, and these conversations are about their time, their life after being in the military as well. So you hear about their, current interests and current insights. It's really, really neat. I'm going to go backwards. So Combat Story's been off for a few weeks, so he's back with the first portion of a conversation with a guy who's done quite a bit of stuff, but started out as a ranger doing some combat jumps into Panama, Grenada. I can't remember, but a long time ago. And then it ended because it's going to be a part 2. So that's a good comeback from Combat Story. I guess Combat Story took a friend of his and went down to Hollywood for a couple of weeks and was telling the Hollywood people how to make the movie. Crap, what's the name of that movie? There's a Halle Berry and somebody are in a new movie that's supposedly, it's called The Union. Like there's a CIA that's above the CIA that nobody knows about called The Union. And it's like a comedy kind of, but it's also like a spy movie in Europe. So I guess these guys went down and offered some insight to the actors on how to, behave and act like an intelligence agent. Anyway, so they've been off for a couple of weeks, or he's been off for a couple of weeks, and this was his comeback show. Let's see, then Mike Drop had this guy on who's an Air Force combat controller. I have not listened to that one, so I'll be listening to that one at some point this weekend. And it's probably good because combat controllers are hardcore, and you don't get enough interviews from Air Force people, really. Let's see. Then this one is from Ed Calderon. He did a conversation. It's a 3-parter, so it's 3 hours long, 3 1-hour interviews, or maybe some of them are longer, but with Tracker Dan. So if you've been following Ed's manifesto at all, he's a big knife guy, and his personal knives are pretty much all made by this guy, Tracker Dan. And they're very well thought out and specific to like their tastes, I guess you could say, from their experiences. And these guys have known each other for a long time on lots, very deep level. They're good friends. So this was an super interesting conversation. You learn a lot about, I never heard of Tracker Dan. I've heard of him, but I never heard a conversation with him. But you learn a lot about Ed too, because like I say, these guys have been friends for so long. Really cool conversation. Also, the movie Hunted from like 2000 something with what's his name and that other guy. That movie is based off the guy Tracker Dan learned from. So a guy who learned, there was a guy, Ed, somebody who was a tracker and ran a survival, or still runs a survival school. He learned from an Apache Indian or an Apache scout, and it was like his grandpa or something. And so anyway, this guy's very knowledgeable in the native traditional ways of scout and scouting like what's the word? Skills, I guess. And this Tracker Dan learned all that stuff. And then he became a SEAL. And then now he's kind of still a SEAL and making knives. Anyway, super cool conversation, worth listening to. And then Borderland had Ed Calderon on. I'll probably listen to this one again because they really talk about some interesting things. And, nothing's staying the same. So as these conversations happen over years now, these guys are not changing their, I guess they're changing their awareness, not necessarily their perspective, but like they're understanding more, and the cartels are changing. And what the cartels used to do is different than the cartels now. It's different. Cartels, they have different philosophies, they have different goals. So whatever you felt about cartels, sort of like other criminals, whatever you felt about biker gangs in the 50s, who cares? Because biker gangs are different now. And whatever you felt about cartels just a few years ago, it's really here nor there, because the cartels aren't the same as they were back then. Or if they are physically still there, they'd have nowhere near the same influence. And some of the cartels that were either tiny or didn't exist a number of years ago are now the ones calling the shots. And again, once they're calling the shots, you start to adapt to whatever the circumstances are, whatever they're doing or whatever they expect. So listening to these conversations is epic. Honestly, it's a really good insight to what's happening. So I don't like the editing. I'll still insist on I don't like their editing. I really like Ed's editing. His is like unique and super cool. This is like frustrating and annoying. Like they just edit poorly. It's just like, usually you should, like good editing, you shouldn't notice it, right? Like this one constantly gets on my nerves because they're always cutting people off and it's real choppy. I mean, I have no editing. I have nowhere to talk, but I can, again, if you notice the editing, I think it's bad editing. I posted a couple of reviews out there, I guess. I might as well post this one. It's not the best Ear Pro ever, but it's inexpensive and it's got Bluetooth in it. So I thought that was kind of cool that you can listen to phone and podcasts and stuff while you're doing something loud. It's not the most rugged. You're not going to jump out of airplanes with this, but it's like $40 or something. It's not super expensive either. I did a couple of like 5 bacon reviews. They sent us a bunch of bacon, so I figured people might want some bacon. It's not inexpensive, but it is made in the USA and it is good. So if you want to grab some bacon, feel free. And then there's all kinds of reviews. When you click on these links, it's going to take you over to the gear channel. We post 2 videos a day, 2 gear review videos a day. So if you ever want to just go look at stuff, kind of like not really a catalog, but just like a dump of gear and gadget reviews, then feel free to check out our other channels over there. Let's see. Then we do polls over on the big channel, and you can get to those through our community tab, essentially, over on the main channel, the Gun Websites channel. We had a couple of polls. What shooting sports do you enjoy the most? What music do you listen to when cleaning your guns? And then how effective do you think rallies are in driving change? So I take my pictures before the lines go out, so you have to jump over to the community tab to see how they came down. The rally one is the frustrating one. I'm a big fan of rallies. I've been to rallies. I follow rallies. I watch them whenever I can, whenever there's coverage of them. And rallies are massively effective. However, if you don't go to rallies and you don't pay attention, you don't get good coverage. Why would you think that rallies are effective? It's not like good gun law pops out of the rallies, but every time a rally happens. So the stuff that happens at rallies are in the realm of like real life, IRL, and that's really hard to get across, right? To record or get out there. So that's frustrating. But seeing the polls essentially say frustration, like rallies ain't going to do nothing. I got nothing against them, but they're not going to do anything. Was expected, but always frustrating. So it would be nice to see the national level organizations not be scared of rallies. They're deathly afraid of a rally not being attended enough, so then they would be perceived as failing, so they won't try, and they'll never figure it out. They'll never get good. They'll never have attendance when they never have rallies. I've talked to the people. I've literally asked what's his face from Second Amendment Foundation, and he refuses to do rallies because of that. And I've heard people talk to GOA guy, and he effectively said the same thing. They'll jump on a rally that's successful because it's somebody else done the work and they've proved that it's successful. They'll show up. They'll put up a booth. They'll act like they're okay with it, but they won't instigate a rally. And that's, I think, to all of our disservice to everybody. There could either be another organization that does host rallies and has the balls to fail once in a while to get rallies off the ground, or gun shows could become rallies, or gun shops could, do something with the infrastructure at gun shops. I don't expect NSSF to facilitate that, but it could be done. And rallies is, I don't know, do you have another way to meet your friends in the community? Some of us chat online. Some people meet up at the range. Your friends at the range, do they have anything more than a loose, like we show up on Thursdays type of relationship? So what would a rally do? Give you an opportunity to show up and hang out with those same people, only in a different environment and focused on our rights instead of whatever gizmos you decided to buy this week? Do we meet up at gun shops? Do we meet up at gun shows and have conversations with people on a regular basis? You might have a couple of booths at a gun show that you look forward to checking out, but do you go to a gun show with a good friend? Or is there a group of friends that meet at the gun show? Like, how does a gun show facilitate community when it's mostly commerce and mostly people are not collectors and they're not political? They're showing up to get good prices on ammo, or maybe, buying something outside the county or the city limits to save on some taxes. That's not the same as 20 years ago when gun shows were for collectors and people who were concerned about our rights, and politicians to show up and listen to gun owners and then just to spend an afternoon relatively inexpensively with hopefully some good food and to just walk around and explore something that's like a swap meet, but indoors often, usually, and with a lot of like-minded folks. As we lose gun shows, as we lose the ranges where people would hang out and just kind of casually shoot on a weekend instead of practicing for their match or doing reviews for products or something, or trying to get famous online by doing quick drills or something, then we've kind of lost some of the casual, slow community building that we had at these events. So, do rallies take the place of that? Do they do all of that? No, but they can do a lot of that. So anyway, it sucks to see that people still aren't rallied about rallies, but things can change, and I'm sure we'll see times when rallies get super popular and everybody will say, oh man, we should be doing these forever, and then it'll go back to where everybody hates rallies again. That's the fun part about living with a bunch of humans, is things don't stay the same. So if you're upset about the way things are, change them. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks to Gunmetal Guy being our only comment tonight, prior to Hillbilly talking earlier before the show even started, and re-becoming a member of the channel. Feel free to buy something over at gearwebsites.com, and we'll be back to pick you up later. Oh, I guess that wasn't very smooth. I could have had some kind of an outro getting ready here. For our friend Patriot, who's constantly posting good stuff on the YouTube and the Instagram, we'll do our ninja outro.
Shit. Ninja? Ninja! Ninja!
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.